Good day. My name is Richard Dako, or you can call me Nana Kwesi Ajman, or Ammonia. And you can find me on Ammonia 84 or Richard Dako on YouTube. If you watch this video and you're much interested, you can subscribe and or share. Beautiful. I'm talking about South Africa at the Nations Cup. I started with the countdown to the Nations Cup, which will start on the 21st of December this year. South Africa is called Bafana Bafana. This football name, the national team is Bafana Bafana. It is an Nguni language which literally translates as the boys, the boys. Its actual meaning in Nguni language is go boys, go boys. That's the actual meaning, go boys, go boys. Though others take the double use of Bafana to mean all of the boys, the team, the management, and as well as spectators together. Yeah, they are all called the boys, the boys. Bafana Bafana would participate in the Africa Cup of Nations much later. Yeah, they would have participated in the Africa Cup of Nations much later than many other African countries, and in 1957. Yeah, but was excluded from the tournament because of the apartheid. South Africa decided to enter 1957 with all white team. Yeah, but the organizers, everybody didn't like the idea of all white team. Yeah, South Africa returned to the world stage in 1992 after 16 years of being banned from FIFA and 40 years of effective suspension due to the apartheid system. On Tuesday, 7th July 1992, South Africa played its first game against Cameroon after its ban was over. They beat Cameroon 1-0. Yeah, it was scored by the famous Dr. Khumalo. South Africa entered the qualifiers for Tunisia 1994, the AFCON. Yeah, they were in Group 5 or Group E, together with Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Mauritius. Their first AFCON qualifier game ended in a 4-1 defeat to their brothers, Zimbabwe. Yeah. Philip Masenga scored a lone goal for South Africa when they lost 4-1. And in doing so, became the first player from South Africa to have scored a goal in the AFCON qualifiers. The same Philemon Masenga who passed away, he's dead in 2019, became the first player to be sent off for South Africa in the AFCON qualifiers. The first player to be sent off in the AFCON qualifiers. That incident happened in 1993 when Zambia defeated South Africa by 3 goals to nothing. South Africa got its first win in the AFCON qualifiers on the 21st of July 1993 when they came from a goal down to beat Mauritius 3-1. However, they couldn't make it past the group stage to Tunisia 1994. They couldn't make it to Tunisia 1994. They came third with 4 points below Zambia, who had 10 points, and Zimbabwe, who had 9 points. In fact, Zambia went all the way to the finals in the AFCON proper when they lost 2-1 to Nigeria. South Africa entered the 20th edition of the AFCON in 1996 as the host nation. Yeah, they entered as the host nation in 1996. Kenya was originally scheduled to host the 1996 AFCON. However, due to poor infrastructure, CAF stripped off the hosting right from Kenya and gave it to South Africa. Yeah, for the first time, the tournament participants grew from 12 to 16. Yeah, 12 to 16. However, Nigeria and Sani Abacha withdrew from the tournament. At the tournament, South Africa was in Group A alongside Cameroon, Egypt, and Angola. In fact, they were not expected to qualify from that group because we have Egypt, you have Cameroon, and Angola. These are all powerhouses in Africa, with the exception of Angola, Egypt is a powerhouse in African football. Cameroon is a powerhouse in African football. Even prior to 1996, they were powerhouses in African football. So it was no brainer. Yeah, it was no brainer that South Africa will qualify from that group. Yeah, in fact, the first game was a shocker. Yeah, their first game was a shocker. They played against Cameroon on 13th July 1996 when South Africa played its first AFCON game, AFCON proper, its first game in AFCON. When they played the first game, it was 13th July 1996. They played Cameroon again. Remember, when the ban was lifted on South Africa, the first game South Africa played was against Cameroon, and they beat Cameroon 1-0 through Dr. Kumalo. Yeah. And then when they were playing their first AFCON game, it was against Cameroon. They beat Cameroon by 3-0. Yeah. South Africa won their first AFCON by beating Cameroon by 3-0. Philemon Masenga again opening the scoring when the game was 15 minutes old. Yeah, he started everything. Mark Williams and John Mosho scored the other goal to complete the rout. The next game was against Angola and was a success with Mark Williams scoring again. 1-0. Mark Williams scored that lone goal. They lost their third games against Egypt but qualified ahead of Egypt with 6 points. At the quarterfinals, Mark Fish and John Mosho ensured a 2-1 win over Algeria would take them to the semifinals. Algeria, also a powerhouse in African football, they were beaten. They were beaten at the quarterfinals. At the semifinals, they were not expected to progress. Why? Because they were meeting the almighty Ghana Black Stars. At the time, Ghana was the most successful team in the AFCON history. In the AFCON history, Ghana was the most successful team in 1996. Yeah, they were the most successful team in AFCON history. They won it in 65. They won it in 63. The first won it in 63, won it in 65, won it in 1978, and then won in 1982. Ghana had lost the Senegal 92 final on penalties to Ivory Coast. Again, Ghana had gone 14 years without winning the AFCON. Therefore, Ghana was hungry for success. The game was dubbed the final before the final. Indeed, it was a tough game. It was a beautiful game for both Ghana and South Africa. South Africa wasn't supposed to survive against Ghana. Yeah, they were not supposed to survive against Ghana's Simoado, against Ghana's Abedi Pele, against Tony Yeboah, against Abradukuma, against Frank Amankwa, Sam Johnson, Kwame Ayew, Afudodu, CK Akono, and the likes, Yawa Champong. They were not supposed to survive. In fact, South Africa came out with flying colors. 3-0 against Ghana. John Mosho, who passed away in 2015, scored twice, with Sean Bartlett getting the other to make it 3-0. In fact, this particular game hurt Ghana so much. Yeah. This particular game hurt Ghana so much. Ghanaians to date do not understand why referee Mohamed Gandor of Egypt chopped off their equalizer. Myself included, I do not know why. South Africa, Mosho scored the first, and then we equalized, but we don't know what and why. Anyways, at the end of the day, South Africa carried the day. At the finals, South Africa maintained their impressive form. They met and beat Tunisia 2-0. Mark Williams scored both goals in 2 minutes. First in the 73rd, and then the second in 75th minute. Mark Williams and Mosho ended the campaign with 4 goals. Both of them from South Africa, and both scored 4 each. Yeah, they were superb. South Africa in 1996 were superb. Yeah. At Burkina Faso 1998, South Africa participated and made it to the finals. They were in Group C, together with Cote d'Ivoire, Angola, and Namibia. When I say Cote d'Ivoire, it is the Ivory Coast. in English we call it the Ivory Coast. Ghanaians prefer calling them Ivory Coast, but Cote d'Ivoire, alert, they prefer to be called Cote d'Ivoire. That's why I try to pronounce it Cote d'Ivoire. They came second to Cote d'Ivoire with 5 points. In their final group game, they met and beat Namibia by 4-1. Benny McCarthy got the hat-trick, and he became the first player to get a hat-trick for South Africa in the AFCONs. At the finals, South Africa lost to Egypt in 2-0 defeat. Benny McCarthy and Hussam Hassan won the Golden Boot Award with 7 goals each. In fact, Hussam Hassan is currently the Egyptian coach. Egypt, they will play the AFCON. I talked about them the last time. Hussam Hassan is currently the head coach of the Egyptian national team. And in 1998, he scored 7 goals alongside Benny McCarthy of South Africa, who also had 7 goals. They again participated in Ghana and Nigeria 2000. Remember, Ghana and Nigeria hosted the 2000 edition of the Nations Cup. They again eliminated Ghana at the quarterfinals. Oh boy, yeah, I was watching that game and I was so pissed off with Ghana. Yeah, Siabonga Nomvete, he scored a 42nd minute header. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful header, and then the ball nestled in the net. They came third that year after beating Tunisia 4-3 on penalties. Sean Bartlett won the Golden Boot award with 5 goals for 2000. In Mali 2002, they made it to the quarterfinals when they lost to host nation Egypt by 2-0. From 2004, 2006, and 2008, they couldn't negotiate their way past the group phase. Yeah, the group phase, they make it to the tournament and group phase, they are kicked out. Since 1996 that South Africa made it to the AFCON, it was 2008 and 2010 that they couldn't qualify to the AFCON. From 96, 98, 2000, 2002, 2004, 2006, they made it to the AFCON. But 2008 and 2010, they couldn't qualify to the AFCON. The decline stopped in the last AFCON in 2023 when they came third after beating DR Congo 6-5 on penalties. This will be the 12th time South Africa is making it to the AFCON. Yeah, they've won 1 in 1996, came second in 1998, came third twice in 2000 and 2003. Yeah, so that's that for South Africa in the Nations Cup of the AFCON. If you find this video interesting, you can subscribe or like or comment, bring a comment, whatever. You can find me on YouTube again, Richard Darko or Ammonia 84. Thank you, and I leave it here. Bye.